Statline Scouting. In case you didn't know, this is a series where I take a look at some underrated prospects, some under-the-radar prospects in minor league baseball this year, and judge them primarily by their stats. Look, the scouts have the info that's going to fill in the gaps. They know how hard a player throws or what pitches they throw. They know who has a pretty girlfriend or who has a good work ethic or who just looks plain good in baseball pants. But the numbers tell a story too, and it's my job to interpret them for your entertainment. Hopefully a few of these names will turn into big-time major leaguers, and when they do, you'll look back at this series and say, hey, the first time I heard that guy's name was, well, Statline Scouting. So the main tool I use for Statline Scouting is the Fangraphs Minor League Leaderboards. The Fangraphs Minor League Leaderboards are awesome. It's great to just get in here and look at the stats, not just across one league, but every affiliated minor league. I just went ahead in here and typed minimum innings pitched 30, and I just sorted by the best ERA. There's some great names on here we could talk about, but one I'm going to highlight is fairly obvious, and that is A.J. Smith-Shawver, the Atlanta Braves system, who, as of today, at least the day I'm recording this, you're probably watching this the next day, has been promoted. He is still a prospect. He still retains rookie eligibility and thus is eligible for Statline Scouting. But yes, A.J. Smith-Shawver has experienced let's call it a meteoric rise. This is his first full pro season. He was drafted in 2021 as a 7th rounder by the Braves. He started the season in high A, moves on to double A, then to AAA, and is now in the majors. Really not that long ago, this guy was the quarterback of his high school team. Now he's playing Major League Baseball for the Atlanta Braves. And you can see why they moved him so quickly. And of course, the Braves have a reputation for this. They did it with Spencer Strider. They did it with Michael Harris II. They did it with Vaughn Grissom. If they like what you're doing, you can move through the system pretty quickly. But A.J. Smith-Shawver, and granted, it was, 5 starts, 21 innings, but he did not allow a run in high A or double A. He did not allow a run until AAA, and now he moves on to the majors. So it's a pretty big accomplishment for A.J. Smith-Shawver. He is a name that you probably know by now, and assuming he doesn't exhaust his rookie eligibility by then, which he very well may, he will appear as a top 100 prospect on all the, let's say, mid-season update type lists. However, he was not considered a consensus top 100 prospect going into this season, and so he is still a player worth highlighting for this series. As you can see here, according to MLB Pipeline, and these lists are like quasi-updated during the year, but not really. This is more of a snapshot of what the industry thought of him preseason. He was ranked as their number 4th Braves prospect, which doesn't sound that bad. Like there's some number 4 prospects that are, great, highly thought of prospects if it's in a strong system. But the thing to remember here is the Braves would not be considered a strong system going into this year. In fact, many of them had him as the weakest system and not a system that had a top 100 prospect at all. Now I think, at least in real time, A.J. Smith-Shawver would be considered the Braves' number 1 prospect and a consensus top 100 guy, but the rankings, because they haven't been updated yet, are yet to reflect that, and so, this is why I get in here with my Statline Scouting and say, hey, in case you didn't know, A.J. Smith-Shawver, now you know. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with sorting by ERA, but we've only scratched the surface of what you can do with the Fangraphs Minor League Leaderboards. Let's move on to a better, slightly more sabermetric stat, yet one that's, still easy to understand. This is strikeout percentage minus walk percentage. This is a stat that's going to celebrate the big strikeout guys while also punishing them a little bit if they also are big walk guys. Anyways, the best player in all of minor league baseball by this stat so far this year is Andrew Abbott of the Cincinnati Reds. Let's talk about Andrew Abbott, a 2021 second rounder. He is about to be 24 years old, so he's much older than A.J. Smith-Shawver, and yet they have both experienced sort of this meteoric rise this year, in particular these first couple months of the 2023 season. Andrew Abbott in 2022, not bad at all, like very good, 0.67 ERA in high A. They move him up to double A, which is a tough jump to make, and the peripherals do get worse. It's still not as bad as his 4.75 ERA. You look at, a 3.48 FIP and a 3.67 xFIP, you say, okay, this guy was still pitching pretty well. This year, he starts in double A again, and in 3 starts, he pitches 15.2 innings. He strikes out 64% of the batters he faced in AA this year. Only walks 5% of them. 64% of the batters he faced in AA this year, he strikes them out. And the end result of that, if you don't allow a home run, is you get negative FIP. Fielding independent pitching is a stat that scales like ERA. It's based off of the 3 true outcomes, strikeouts, walks, and home runs. But unlike ERA, ERA only goes to 0. But if you absolutely tear it up, you can get negative FIP. And that is what Andrew Abbott did in AA. Naturally, it earned him a promotion to AAA, where he's continued to do well. Not as well as he was doing in AA, but still doing well. Still striking out 36% of the batters he faces. That's pretty darn impressive. This is a guy you will most likely see in the big leagues at some point this year. He is, like A.J. Smith-Shawver, a player who would not have been considered to be a top 100 prospect going into this year, but now would be. According to MLB Pipeline, Andrew Abbott is the number 6th ranked Cincinnati Reds prospect. I don't know how much he has risen over the past couple months. I don't know what it was like when we opened the season necessarily, but looking at the names currently ahead of him, I feel like that's reasonable. You could reasonably assert that these 5 Reds players are better prospects than Andrew Abbott. Elly De La Cruz is a stud in the making. Now is not the time to talk about him. Statline scouting, we're looking for the under-the-radar prospects. He is not under anybody's radar. But Andrew Abbott coming in, the left-handed pitcher. He's a little bit older compared to some of these guys, but he's looking pretty legit so far in 2023. One thing that I do want to mention, and this applies to both Smith-Shawver and Andrew Abbott, is that the Southern League at AA level is using a pre-tacked ball this year. This is similar to what they do in NPB, that would be Japan's professional baseball league. As a result, pitchers are getting a better grip on the baseball. They're probably able to spin it more, and strikeout rates are up. And so I think what's happening with some of these teams is they're realizing, hey, we don't know if we can actually trust the AA numbers. So like with Smith-Shawver and like with Andrew Abbott, their stays in AA in that Southern League were quite short. And I think teams were eager to move them up to AAA, where they were playing with a baseball that's more similar to what they're using in Major League Baseball, because that's ultimately the goal here. So I've hopped on to the batter side of things, and we are looking at players with at least 10 steals and 10 home runs so far this season. So we're looking for sort of, good power speed guys. And one of those guys is David Hamilton of the Boston Red Sox. And he really caught my eye because he was an 8th rounder in 2019. So, and also for the Milwaukee Brewers, by the way, not even the Red Sox. I like guys, when they're not necessarily a top, first round draft pick. I feel like it's more fun to cover guys who are picked in, the middle rounds or the later rounds. And also, I knew David Hamilton because I knew that he stole 70 bases at the AA level last year for Boston. Right now, he's at 25. I think his pace is actually, it's probably pretty similar to what it was last year. But the power appears to be greater. Last year, he had 12 home runs in 531 plate appearances. This year, he has 11 home runs in 207 plate appearances. So his home run rate is up. I will point out, this is a really nice slash line here that leads up to an 853 OPS. I'm a little surprised about the 108 WRC plus though, which tells me, he's playing in a pretty high offensive environment in AAA at the moment. He is a middle infielder, listed as a second baseman / shortstop. I think this is also relevant to the Red Sox because those positions are definitely up in the air for them. So he could really contribute to a Red Sox team this year. And, with the emphasis on the stolen base this year, in terms of the bigger bags, and you're seeing success rates go up, and you're seeing the rate of steals, balloon. You have these guys like Estuary Ruiz. It seems like they steal a base like every day. David Hamilton, I think, could be really relevant, maybe to your fantasy team. And again, we hop on MLB Pipeline just to sort of give David Hamilton a hype check, like how much hype is there surrounding him at the moment. And as we scroll down here, it's going to take us a while, but he is there, listed as the Boston Red Sox 27th prospect. We're not quite done looking at guys with at least 10 homers and 10 steals at this point in the season. I also want to talk about Jonatan Clase, who's an outfielder in the Seattle Mariners system. As far as I can tell, no relation to Emmanuel Clase, the closer for the Cleveland Guardians. I did look into that, but no relation that I can at least track for now. Jonatan Clase, 5'9" switch hitter, and looking like a power speed guy. He had 7 home runs and 17 steals at high A, and then he gets the promotion to double A, and he goes, 6 home runs, 16 steals so far. A couple of things stand out to me here. One, the transition from high A to double A may be the toughest jump to make in the minors, apart from the jump from, say, triple A to the majors. It's also hard to get, from rookie ball to full season A ball. Don't get me wrong, but that high A to double A jump is considered difficult, and his numbers have gone down as a result of that. You can see he's slugging 700 in high A, and now his numbers, while good, are more human. I should at least put it that way. One thing that interested me here is his strikeout rate's fairly high. He struck out about 30% of the time so far this season. However, and Fangraphs doesn't list him here, but they are on the leaderboards. I looked at his swinging strike rate, and his swinging strike rate was more in line with like a 25% strikeout rate. So that gives me some hope that he's not going to be, just a massive swing and miss guy to the point where, that really caps his upside. I mean, imagine an upside, and imagine a guy who could go, 20-20 in the majors, or even 30-30 or something like that if we're getting really bold. Imagine that guy in an outfield with Julio Rodriguez and Jared Kelenic. And I've already covered another Mariners outfielder in this series a couple years ago by the name of Gabriel Gonzalez, and his prospect pedigree has certainly been on the rise since then. Fangraphs gives Jonatan Clase an 80 speed grade as well, and that stood out to me. So he's getting some hype right now for sure. He's not super under the radar. We still got some of those guys to go, but Jonatan Clase, Mariners fans, you should at least know this guy. I mean, he's only 21, just turned 21, and definitely holding his own in Double-A as a power speed guy. Here are the Mariners' top 30 prospects according to MLB Pipeline. Their system is headlined by Harry Ford and Bryce Miller. Bryce Miller absolutely killing it in MLB right now. Gabriel Gonzalez, who I just name dropped, comes in at 7. And Jonatan Clase comes in at number 12. By the way, it looks like Clase was part of the same international free agent class as Noelvi Marte for the Seattle Mariners, both Dominican. Noelvi Marte, I believe, cost in the millions. I tried to look up what Clase signed for, and it looked like just $35,000. So, minimal investment for the Mariners there, but they may have just gotten a pretty good player out of it. So we're taking a look at that aforementioned Southern League here, where we're not sure if the numbers are real or fake because of that pre-tacked ball, and I'm just going to sort by slugging. Who's slugging? Who's hitting for power? And one thing that stands out here, that's a lot of Cubs. We've got 4 Cubs in the top 9, 5 in the top 14, and I don't know if that's necessarily, a home ballpark thing. And I do want to point out here, these WRC plus numbers over here on the far right, they are not, as far as I know, park adjusted. I believe they're just based on the overall offensive skew of the league, not necessarily the ballpark. So that may explain why some of these Cubs are slugging. I want to talk about the guy who's leading the entire league in slugging, and that is a catcher by the name of Pablo Aliendo. And the catcher thing here is important because, look, you see a first baseman putting up big power numbers, you say, that's great, but he's going to need to hit, right? He's going to need to keep hitting because he's playing fairly low on the defensive spectrum. Catcher is the hardest position to play defensively. And so, if you're getting any sort of offensive contribution from a catcher, that's great. That's great. And then when you see a catcher tearing it up, that's really exciting. Here's what stands out to me about Pablo Aliendo. First of all, he's young. He just turned 22. Like, he's a young 22, and he's playing in Double-A. And he's made that jump from high A last year to Double-A with some really, really impressive results, particularly on the power front. Last year, he hit 7 home runs in 89 games. This year, he's hit 7 home runs. He's only played 27 games. And, you've seen that strikeout rate come up. Not too surprising, again, considering strikeout rates are really high in that league in general. but the walk rate has also come up, right? And he's still sporting, the same BABIP as he did last year. But right now he's got an OPS that's close to 1,000. He's slugging over 600, 7 home runs in 27 games, and this is a catcher. I think that's worth getting excited about. MLB Pipeline Cubs top 30 prospects. We're going to scroll past a few other catchers here. Miguel Amaya, Moises Ballesteros, and then we get down to 29 here, and we finally find Mr. Pablo Aliendo. And I read his bio over here, signed for $200,000 out of Venezuela in that 2018 class. What kind of stood out to me is that I think they like his defense overall. They describe him as quicker and agile than most catchers, flexible, solid arm strength, good game calling and leadership ability. So this seems like a guy who's going to stick at that catcher position. And if he's hitting for power, he's going to be a very relevant major leaguer. So a good name to know, Pablo Aliendo, the 22-year-old catcher in the Chicago Cubs system. Hope you're enjoying the Statline scouting so far, but I want to tell you guys real quick, I have one of those SeatGeek influencer codes. Basically, you get $20 off tickets to presumably a baseball game, but you can use them for other things like concerts. Code FOOLISH down below, you get $20 off, and also I get $20, so hey, come on now, it's a win-win. One thing I like to do with Statline scouting is this series, and Fangraphs minor league leaderboards honestly make it fairly easy, is look at certain player archetypes. I can look for the big power hitter, but I can also look for just the high contact, low strikeout guys. And right now I'm looking at guys who walk more than they strike out in minor league baseball so far this season. And I've sorted that simply by walk rate divided by K rate. So Mr. Ernie Clement, who's kind of, I would consider him to be kind of a quad A player, at least so far in his career. He has about 4 walks for every strikeout in AAA so far, which is very, very impressive. Xavier Edwards has been on top 100 prospect lists before, currently in Miami's system. He walks about 2 times for every time he strikes out. That's really impressive. Everyone's looking for the next Steven Kwan, Everyone's looking for the next Steven Kwan. Here's a name that stands out to me. I want to talk about Caleb Durbin in the New York Yankees system. So Durbin, by the way, is kind of attached to Lucas Litke in a weird way, which means he's attached to A.J. Smith-Shawver. Basically, Durbin, the Braves traded him to grab Lucas Litke, who didn't even really have a roster spot on the Yankees. He has just been DFA'd to make room for Smith-Shawver, so it's all connected here in this universe. Let's talk about Caleb Durbin. He's a 5'6", 175-pound second baseman. I would probably describe that build as a little bit stocky, almost. He has not hit a home run yet this season. He has 0 home runs in 37 games so far, but he did hit 8 in Atlanta's system last year, so he is capable. But what he's done is he's sort of done a little trade-off here, and he said, hey, maybe I haven't hit a home run yet, but I'm not going to strike out, and I am going to walk. And because he's done that, he's also been able to steal 25 bases and only be caught stealing 4 times in 37 games so far. And the Yankees liked it. They liked what they saw in high A when he had a .464 on-base percentage with this approach. Forget the ISO. I know he's not hitting for power, but .464 on-base percentage, that plays promotion up to AA. And in AA so far, we've seen the numbers be a little bit more pedestrian, but still, he's walked 3 times as much as he has struck out. He has 6 walks, it's just 2 strikeouts at the AA level so far this season. And yeah, everyone's looking for the next Steven Kwan or next Dustin Pedroia. I don't guarantee that 14th rounder Caleb Durbin is that guy, but he is at least, somewhat in that mold. And, there's sort of a fun spectrum for baseball players, and there's also a good spectrum. Sometimes players are good, but they're not necessarily fun. Sometimes players are fun, but they're not necessarily good. I don't know how good Caleb Durbin is or will be, but I do know he's fun. Here are the Yankees' top 30 prospects according to MLB Pipeline, headlined, of course, by Jason Dominguez, The Martian. We're scrolling down. We're scrolling down. We're scrolling down. There's no Caleb Durbin to be found. However, he is number 1 in our hearts. When it comes to discussing prospects and interpreting their stats and maybe even ultimately ranking them, age is important, particularly their age relative to the level of competition they are facing. I'm here looking at players in high A, pitchers with at least 10 innings pitched to be specific, and I'm sorting by that classic strikeout rate minus walk rate percentage. And at the top are a couple of 25-year-olds. And I'm not saying these 25-year-olds can't ever be good, but it's more impressive if you're doing it facing batters who on average are older than you rather than younger than you. So let's take a look at the high A level, but let's look at pitchers age 21 or younger. And sorting by that same stat, we have A.J. Smith-Shawver, who we already talked about. I want to talk about a pitcher by the name of Edwin Jimenez. Edwin Jimenez, a pitching prospect, righty for the Milwaukee Brewers, the Milwaukee Brewers system. First of all, Milwaukee Brewers, that's another club that has developed some really nice pitching over the years. And Edwin Jimenez last year already threw a lot of innings. He threw 113 innings at the minor league level, all in full season A ball, had a 4.75 ERA, had a FIP around 5, didn't particularly tear it up. This year he starts at that same level, throws 18 innings, and he's striking everybody out, and his walk rate is way down, and also good, his ground ball rate is over 50%, so the ground ball rate is up, which is good for him, so he's getting some softer contact as well, and he pitches to, a 2 ERA and a 2 FIP, and then he gets the promotion, and I really like, promotions are a really nice thing to look at for this series because teams are basing those promotions off of, not just what your ERA is, but also, internal metrics that, people like myself don't even have access to. But he gets the promotion, and now in the same amount of innings, he is maintaining that high level of performance. You can see, striking out around 35% of the batters he faces. Walk rate, I'm sure well below the league averages, just a pretty low walk rate overall. And also ground ball rate, pretty healthy as well. And he just hasn't allowed runs this year. He has a 2 ERA in A, and now moving on to high A, he has a 1.47 ERA. He has allowed 1 home run all year. And sort of the interesting thing for me on Edwin Jimenez is I can't find like a ton of information on him necessarily. I know he's a right-handed pitcher and he's 6'3", 175, which is good. That's a good, you'd call that like a projectable frame. Maybe he adds some velocity as he gets older or something like that. But there's some information missing on him and that I haven't quite been able to locate. And here's what I mean by that. So here's Edwin Jimenez's page on MILB.com. Here's what he looks like. We can see he was born on December 12, 2001 in Caracas, Venezuela. What's weird to me is that he signed a minor league contract with the Brewers on October 11th, 2018. And what's kind of weird about that is if you were really part of like an international free agent class, back then, you would sign on like July 2nd. The window would open, you sign July 2nd. Now it's been changed up, and now it's the January 15th. If you're thinking about, like Ethan Salas, the catcher in the Padres organization, the young phenom, he was signed on January 15th. October 11th is a weird time to sign, and I haven't been able to find any sort of article that's like, hey, the Brewers signed Edwin Jimenez. I'm sure it's out there. I'm sure, if there was any sort of signing bonus involved, it was reported. I'm sure it was reported probably in Spanish, which is why I can't find anything. But yeah, I hate to say, I don't know where this guy came from. Obviously, he came from Venezuela, but the circumstances are a little bit abnormal, at least for a player that is playing this well. And I don't mean that to cast aspersions on Edwin. I just mean to say, hey, it seems like at least the Brewers have gotten this guy with minimal investment on their part. So yeah, Edwin, not really part of the international free agent class, so to say, like after, signing day or whatever, his name would not have been there. He signed on, as I said, October 11th. This is his page on Baseball Cube, and they have him sorted as if he's like an undrafted free agent. which, he would not be eligible for any sort of draft. So technically yes, but also kind of no. His school is simply listed as Venezuela. It looks like his bonus was 0. So look, Edwin, keep pitching like that, buddy, because it seems like they basically got you for free. And you were scouted by Mr. Javier Meza. That's at least somewhat of a lead. But yeah, I hope Edwin continues to pitch well. He's tearing it up, and I hope he secures generational wealth for him and his family. Milwaukee Brewers top 30 prospects. Did you think you were going to see Edwin Jimenez on here? Because he's not. I've added some more filters here to the Fangraphs minor league leaderboards. We're basically looking here for a combo of hit tool, let's say contact, but also power. So we're looking for strikeout rate under 20%, swinging strike rate under 10%, ISO, which is isolated power, which is slugging minus average over 200. So, just someone who can slug, hit for some power. And then we're looking for youth as well, age 22 or under. And in minor league baseball, there are 8 players who have done that so far. One of them is Jackson Holliday, who's doing it as a 19-year-old and has moved up to the high A level. Also in the high A level, who I'll be talking about today, is Mr. Nathan Martorella of the San Diego Padres. Nathan Martorella, I like that he's 6'1", 224 pounds. That says to me, hey, here's a guy who could hit some home runs. And he has hit some home runs this year, 7 to be precise, in 44 games. But the plate discipline is definitely a highlight so far. He is walking 14% of the time while striking out just 17% of the time. That leads to a 384 on base and 484 slugging. And what's good about this walk rate, particularly at this level, is that, look, there are guys who can walk 15% of the time in high A by just being, bat on the shoulder merchants. They are playing in a league where there are guys who may have nasty stuff, but they may not always be able to throw that nasty stuff for strikes. And as they move further and further up the minor league ladder, they're going to find it, harder and harder to walk at that rate without having also a massive strikeout rate. And that's sort of the key for Nathan here. He's walking a lot, but he's not striking out a lot. He's batting .277. There's a lot of guys who can put up the 150 average and the 300 on base at these levels, but that's not what he's doing with his 15% walk rate. So that's good for him. Listed as a first base outfielder, and once again, that's the San Diego Padres, a 5th rounder, 2022. Unlike some other names we've mentioned so far, you will find Nathan Martorella on his team's respective top 30 prospect list on MLB Pipeline. He is listed at number 23 for the Rockies with an ETA, that's when he would presumably make the majors, of 2025. And look, that plate discipline stuff is awesome, that hit tool stuff is awesome, but sometimes you just want a guy who hits dingers. And if we look at players here, 22 or younger in the minor leagues so far in 2023, none of them have hit more dingers than Chris Newell of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Let's talk about Chris Newell. He was a 13th round draft pick last year in the 2022 draft out of the University of Virginia. He's 6'3", 200 pounds, so that's a big frame. That's a frame you could hopefully expect some power from, and he has delivered 14 home runs in 41 games for the Dodgers this year. He is playing in Single A, where he is, a little bit old for that level. Let's put it that way. You're on a different path when you get drafted out of college, obviously. Hopefully he gets a promotion soon, but he is absolutely killing it there. Has also stolen 7 bases, by the way, but a 312 average, 426 on base, 662 slugging, OPS close to 1,000, and again, that's sort of highlighted by 14 home runs in just 41 games for this guy. Strikeout rate is up there a little bit at about 28%, but he also manages to take his walks as well at 17%. I would expect a promotion here fairly soon, and the Dodgers, they're known for they've had some good drafts over the years, and they've gotten seemingly everything they can from their player development, and also, just even turning, veterans who haven't come up through their system into really quality players for them as well. So Chris Newell, could he be next in line, with the Los Angeles Dodgers? You never know. Here are the Dodgers' top 30 prospects according to MLB Pipeline. You will not find Chris Newell on this list, and honestly, maybe it's justifiable. This is just, a really deep system every year, a really strong system every year. Maybe Chris Newell gets on here at some point, but at least for MLB Pipeline, not just yet. One more prospect to talk about, one more opportunity to harness the power of the Fangraphs minor league leaderboards. I'm going to do an archetype search and look for a pitching archetype that I really like. Give me the no walk guy. Give me walk rate under 5%. Give me a guy who I can convince myself is the next Shane Bieber or the next George Kirby. And you know what? When they're not walking guys, give me a ground ball rate over 50%. Let's get a high ground ball rate. Give me the next Framber Valdez. And among that crew, of which there are only 7, let's sort by strikeout rate, to reveal Mr. Blake Adams, a 22-year-old in the Colorado Rockies organization, currently pitching in A-ball. Blake Adams, 6'2", a 2022 13th round draft pick, the 386th player off the board. That's how many Pokemon there were after 3 generations. What that has to do with Blake Adams, I don't know. But the numbers are really, really impressive. 32% strikeout rate, 33% strikeout rate to just 3% walk rate. He's striking out about 10 batters for every walk. 50 strikeouts, 5 walks so far. ERA of 2, FIP also around 2, and the ground ball rate's there as well, 55.8%, and that's probably going to be relevant for him because he is a Colorado Rockies pitcher, and it is really, 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 really hard to be a Colorado Rockies pitcher. He's going to have to pitch in some insanely high run environments before he even reaches Coors, and then someday he's going to be in Coors facing Manny Machado or Freddie Freeman or Mookie Betts and scratching his head wondering, where did it all go wrong? But for now, everything is going right for Blake Adams. Also like that he is providing some volume, 40 innings pitched over the course of 7 games started. That's pretty good for that level. 22 years old is not necessarily young for that level, but I mean, when you're tearing it up like he is, I feel like it's a name worth knowing. Is Blake Adams on the Colorado Rockies top 30 prospects list on MLB Pipeline? Some would say no. I'm sort of a glass half full guy, so I'm just going to say not yet.